All right, so here's the next game in the series that finished, and this was against a player who at the time was around the 1400 mark, I think just under 1400. So let's see what happened. We've got the computer doing the analysis for us, and we were white. So knight f3, usually I play that or d4, so that's normal. d6 is fine, nothing wrong with that. d4, normal stuff for me. e6, this is a little bit unusual, the small center as they call it, but okay, it's okay. You can see what the computer thinks as we go along. Remember, if it's in a white square, it thinks it's a slight advantage to white. If it switches to a black square and says minus, slight advantage to black. So at the moment, it thinks I'm probably perhaps sort of half a pawn up, just positionally. So bishop g5, I often play that. The computer wanted me to play e4, which is obviously fine. Just take the center. Might as well have a big center compared to black's small one. But bishop g5 is just a move that I quite like. Knight e7. Bishop e7, the computer thinks is better. I would agree with that because from this square, the knight is now blocking the bishop. But let's see how we carry on. And e4. Okay, computer likes that. h6. Computer thinks that's probably the best move. Another option, develop the knight. But you could start to see if the knight goes here, how's black getting the bishops out? It's quite cramped. And it's that space that's why the computer thinks white's already a pawn up, even though white's not a pawn up, but positionally is well in charge. Okay, next move. So bishop h4, it actually wanted me to play bishop to h3. So that's interesting. It says it's a perfectly okay move, but look at the analysis now. The computer thinks that's bishop h4, just swaps it back to being equal. Really interesting. Bishop e3, it wanted me to play. g5, okay, well, that's natural enough. You mean the pawn is supported by his mate, so why not grab some space? Fine, and that gives a chance for the bishop to come out that way. Okay. Bishop g3 is forced, and don't worry too much about that. Minus 0.8 is so insignificant that it basically means the position's level. Okay, fine. It didn't like c3, no. So now for some reason it actually thinks this is slightly better for black, but again by half a pawn. It wanted me to play h4, which is pretty thematic when you've got these two pawns here. It likes to play h4, so you take one, takes back, and you've suddenly got a battle over the h file. Makes it very difficult for black to castle this side too if this file becomes open. Okay, fine, but still nothing disastrous here. There's no mistakes. Well, until then. So the computer thinks that in that position, f5 is a better move for black. So let's just, I think I can just click that and it'll show us why. So the computer wants to play that. So look at all the space. Go, oh, that's not quite what I meant to do. Hang on. Yeah, look at all the space being grabbed here by this advance. But there is an element, whoops, didn't mean that arrow, having a nightmare with the arrows. There's an element of risk to that, isn't there? Look, because that diagonal and the king's in the middle. But okay, so the computer wanted to play f5. What actually happened was d5 swings that tiny advantage back to me. What did I play? I think I just played e5, didn't I? Oh, no, I remember now. No, I decided to keep the tension in the middle. So I just developed bishop b5 check was an alternative I could have played, but knight bd2 was the best move. Well, okay. And the computer doesn't like b6. I'm guessing because of the... It's a good move sometimes in the opening, this one, but I'm guessing the computer doesn't like it here because of the white squares. I'm not sure. It felt that black should just castle. But I can understand why black didn't, because the shield in front of the black king is suddenly 2 squares further forward than it usually would be. So I totally get why black didn't, but let's see. So b6 it doesn't like, and the computer thinks I should have played knight e5. And yeah, I can understand why. Look what it would have been targeted, not that one, targeting from there, the white square. It's a nice place to put your knight in the middle of the board. I think I did think about it, actually. I think I gave it some consideration at the time. But I mean, queen c2, okay. I've developed a piece and I'm getting ready to castle. It can't be that much of a disaster. Bishop b7, okay. Again, the computer wanted white to black to castle, but okay, not too bad. Bishop d3. It wanted me to take there, but I remember saying in the game I didn't want to be the one taking. I wanted to try to make black take me so that I ended up with a bigger presence in the center. But bishop d3 is okay, nothing wrong with it. Knight d7, fine. Castles queenside, fine. It wanted me to play e5 and lock the board. The reason I didn't play e5 was because I felt that this bishop was then going nowhere. It wouldn't be able to get to this square. It would just be blocked. So that's why I never did. Knight f6, it says is good. It wants to, the computer wants to play c5 instead, and that's kind of like the obvious pawn break in this kind of position. So attack that way while I'm doing it this way. Black's trying to do it in the other direction, but knight f6, you know, it can't be a bad move. It doesn't lose anything. h3, I didn't want the knight coming down here. I think that's why I played h3 from memory. And of course, if the knight comes here, then I had a way to run my bishop away. I didn't really want to lose the bishop. I thought it was quite nice having the bishop on that diagonal. So a6, it says it's a perfectly good move, but it actually wanted, it felt, computer thinks d4 is better, but okay. King b1, again, perfectly good. Not very many mistakes in this, is there? Queen d7 says is inaccurate, but rather than wrong. And again, it wants black again to play this c5 move to try and break in the center. And I think by the time black finally does play this, it's quite a lot later in the game. Why cd5 takes, I mean, wonder what would have happened. cd5, I don't think it's dramatically different anyway. Knight e5, I mean, that's part of the problem with the queen coming here, of course, is it just allowed me to put my knight in the middle of the board and gain time, because now I'm attacking the queen. So yeah, knight e5 is good. Queen now has to go back again. So that's kind of why queen d7 a minute ago was a bit of a waste of time. She was never going to be able to stay there. Okay, rook hf1. I said later in the game, why I did it was because I wanted to play f4, take, and then have the rook pointing at f7. And then later in the game, I seem to recall wishing I'd played the other rook, across there, so that I had that one on that file. What did the computer still wants me to swap in the middle of the board. Yeah, I was never going to do that. Isn't that strange that I had no plans to ever be the one to release the tension in the middle of the board? Okay, takes, best, big old series of exchanges, and we're still at this white being half a pawn better stage. Why? Well, my pawn's my center. Okay, look at everything I've got in the center, and my king is safer than the black one because the black one is still stuck in the middle of the board. So that's why the computer thinks we're half a pawn better. Okay, castles. And now, after all that, it's finally not the best move. And I think that's probably going to be because I've got all these things coming to attack the black king. It's just... But it's not wrong. He just thinks it's inaccurate. What did it want to do? Queen d5. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Computer wants to do that to... Oops, not that one. I guess to swap the queens. Because if I'm going to be attacking, it doesn't want me to have a queen doing the attacking. So maybe that's why. But yeah, so it wants queen d5, but it didn't get it. It got castles. f4 is best. Yeah, as just discussed, we've now got a rook here. We want to do that. But I still wish that I'd done it the other way around. Well, I didn't, so there we go. Knight f5, inaccurate. Now the analysis is starting to swing my way. It still thinks queen d5 is best, but even then, it has got a pawn and a half advantage to white. So queen d5 in the hope that white will swap queens. But it actually says not to swap queens. It would want me to drop the queen back and keep my queen on the board. Don't swap. Okay, rook d3, it's good, it's not the best. It wanted bishop h2. Yeah, again, if you were watching the actual stream, I did consider this because then you're looking at being able to play g4. At the moment, the bishop's kind of in the way. So that makes sense. And I wonder if that's why ages ago it wasn't too fussed about me somehow swapping the bishop off. Anyway, so yeah, so knight f5 it doesn't like. Rook d3 is okay, but bishop h2, yeah, better, but yeah. I did wonder about that in the game. Rook c8 is the best move. Fg5, so here comes the culmination of the plan, trying to get down this f file. Hg5 is fine, and then I'm not surprised it didn't like that. I was getting annoyed. If I was going to do this, I should have done it a couple of moves ago instead of rook d3, because then I could have brought the other rook to here, and I'd have had my two rooks just where I wanted them. So I totally get why it's saying that one's not the best. It's still okay. It's not a question mark, but it's probably not the best. It wanted me to just play h4 and just open up the king position. I wanted this rook there first. And that's why I remembered, you remember I said, I moved the wrong rook to f1 earlier in the game, definitely. Anyway, so then knight takes g3. That's just a mistake. That's a useful defensive piece sat there, whereas that bishop was doing precisely 0. And I would agree, once again, the computer wants black to play c5, to play this break in the middle of the board. So rook g3 is obviously the only move. Now look at the analysis. It thinks white is 2.5 pawns up, even though on the actual board, the material is level. And that's all about active pieces. Look at the active pieces. I've got ways to break into the king position. I've got a lovely knight, a nice central queen. So I'm not actually 2 pawns up, but the advantages in the position say that I am. F5 is good, but not best. F6, kicking the knight away. It wanted to play. I totally understand why the opponent didn't want to do that, because with no pawn on F7, this looks really, really weak. So maybe he was worried about me playing the knight there. Okay, queen c6. Oh, it was best. Okay, so I did quite a lot of thinking about that at the time, and I seem to recall wanting to stop c5. That's why I put the queen on that square. So I'm quite pleased that was the best move. Rook e8 is okay. Once again, that's interesting. So once again here, the computer wants black to try to swap queens. Even though it would still be an advantage to me, it's prepared to sacrifice that pawn to get the queens off the board. Okay, so that's quite telling that black's worried about, the computer's worried about the black position there. Queen f3, now it doesn't like that. It still thinks I'm winning, but it thinks I should have put the rook back to the middle of the board, back to e1. I don't think I even gave that consideration in the game. I think I was busy looking at whether I could play h4 or rook f1 or move this rook and play g4. So that is interesting. So the computer is saying the best move here, put the rook back in the middle of the board. And then there's not really a whole lot black can do looking at the analysis, is there? So then that's going to be targeting this square, isn't it? So this is getting difficult to defend. Maybe I can play, I don't know, maybe I can play knight f3 and threaten that one. We'd have the rook and the queen both attacking that. It's going to be difficult to defend. So I guess that's why rook e1. What actually happened? I put the queen back here. I know why, yes, because I wanted to go up to this square and start attacking this one. So I just saw this diagonal. Actually, in the end, this worked out rather well, didn't it? If anyone's seen the end of the game on the other playlist. So, okay. C5, finally, and it is the best move. And then queen h5, and I remember saying in the playlist, I'm going to play queen h5 because that I wanted to take these white squares. I wanted to attack this because now there's two pieces attacking it. I could play h4. I was getting terribly excited. I thought it was all very good. And I remember saying, and I wouldn't be surprised that if black centralizes their queen because they see a check here, and you know, and that kind of comes fairly soon. Let's have a little look. Rook c7, weird move, big mistake. You can see now that the computer's decided that even though the pieces are level, it's now got white with a near full rook advantage. It did not like that at all. It wanted to play queen to c7. So if you're going to defend across there, the computer wanted to do it with the queen and keep the rooks connected to each other. But it's still accepting that this pawn is doomed. So I'm not sure, you know, I'm struggling to see if black can save it anyway, save this position anyway. So yeah, rook takes g5 was best. I looked at lots of different things there, didn't I, if I remember rightly, whether to push this pawn forward and do it that way. or whether to take with the queen and just be a pawn up, go for an ending. Rook g5 was best. And this, I think, is where the mistake comes. Yeah, the queen d5 blunder that just leads to a checkmate is exactly what was called. I didn't think they'd blunder the rook. I thought they'd do it on the previous move when this rook was still here and could defend. But in fact, there it is. Eyeing a check, eyeing bishop takes, knight, pawn takes, queen takes, getting the pawn back, but overlooking that this rook is just hanging. And so one more move, queen takes here. And I think that's the last move of the game because it's now actually checkmate in 3 from here. And I did sort of point out how this worked on the other stream, but let's have a look. So king h7, rook h5. There's nothing that black can do about any of this. Bishop h6. Oh, that's actually quicker. Yeah, so on the stream, there's a quicker way. On the stream, I said queen g6, which is mate in 3. I found that one. But there's actually a quicker one, isn't there? Really, really pretty. It should be rook takes bishop, king to g7. If king takes rook, then queen here would be checkmate, as it's supported by the knight. And then queen h8 is mate. So the queen's attacking, she's supported by the rook, and the knight is guarding that square, so no escape. So, okay, yeah, that was a decent enough game. Just play the last couple of moves. That slight mistake, and then unfortunately that one ended it. Yeah, what should have been played was rook f8, but even then you can still see the analysis well in white's favor at this point with the knight attacking. The bishop can't capture it because of the pin. The rook's heading towards the king. The queen's heading towards the king. Yeah, it's pretty nasty. Pretty nasty. So, okay, that was a decent game, and that was one that got our grade up to around the 1470 mark. So it's going up, it's going up, it's going up. Hope you enjoyed looking at that one, and there'll be another finished game along shortly. See you next time.